Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today it is time to look towards the next season of The Division 2. Year 6 Season 3, titled Burden of Truth, is set to begin exactly 1 week from when I'm releasing this video on Tuesday, February 25th. That's right, it kind of snuck up on us given the roadmap changes that the developers recently made. Now, we know that this next season is no longer going to deliver the much anticipated Battle for Brooklyn DLC as we were previously expecting. However, that doesn't mean that there isn't anything noteworthy on the way. As always, we've got plenty of new gameplay items being injected into the experience. There's a healthy amount of changes and feedback being implemented after last season's major edition of Seasons 2.0. And we've even got one huge request that the community has been begging for years. So, while Burden of Truth is not set to be quite as sprawling as last season's Shades of Red was with overhauls, balancing changes, and all of that, there's still some important things coming. And so, in this video, we're going to be breaking down what I deem to be the 5 biggest changes coming with The Division 2's next season. We'll get right into the breakdown. Only thing I wanted to say first is that if you end up enjoying the video and you want to stay looped to see all of my coverage for Burden of Truth when it launches and everything else coming to The Division 2 in the future, then I hope you'll consider clicking that subscribe button if you haven't already. There's plenty more videos like this one on the way. Without further ado, however, let's get into this. Beginning with number 1, we have what the community has been asking for from the developers for years, and that is increased stash space. That's right, it's finally coming. So, currently in-game, our maximum stash capacity is 300 slots, and for a while now, players have said that with every new season delivering new gear sets, brands, exotics, and everything else that we get, 300 simply isn't enough space to keep everything anymore. And so, the devs heard our cries, and as of Year 6 Season 3, the new maximum stash capacity will be 400. However, there are some important conditions that you will have to meet in order to get these new slots. They are being doled out in bundles of 50, so on top of the 300 that we already have, you will get 50 additional slots for owning the Warlords of New York expansion, and you will get 50 additional slots for owning the Year 1 Pass add-on. That's the way they're doing it. Now, in case you don't own either of those things, or maybe you're not even sure if you do, then you can investigate within the in-game store and it will say owned if you do in fact own it, and prospective buyers can of course do the same within that menu or on your respective platform's dedicated marketplace. So yeah, although it has a few caveats, we're finally getting additional stash space. Who'd have thought we'd ever see the day? For change number 2, we have Season Pass XP. Now, last season in The Division 2, we got Seasons 2.0, which overhauled most, if not all, systems in the game relating to seasons and seasonal progression. It was a big transition to make, one that certainly came with much feedback from the community, and the devs have taken much of it, making various changes to systems like the seasonal journey and priority objectives. However, one of the most noteworthy changes that I want to highlight here is what they're doing to Season Pass XP. Prior to Seasons 2.0, as many of you likely remember, Season Pass XP was directly tied to our SHD progression, right? 1 shade level equaled 1 Season Pass level. Seasons 2.0 saw them decoupling the two and limiting the sources for Season Pass XP to a few select things, such as the seasonal journey, weekly projects, and a few others. Now, Year 6 Season 3 will not be completely reverting to the 1.0 style of pass progression. However, some big changes are being made. On top of them already making it so that every priority objective activity rewards Season Pass XP as part of a minor patch after Year 6 Season 2's release. As of the launch of Burden of Truth, now each of the following activities will reward Season Pass XP. Those include main missions, open world activities, DZ landmarks, and the Conflict, Summit, Countdown, and Descent game modes. So this should greatly expand players' options in agency in choosing what they want to play in order to rank their pass, and those who are the most motivated to progress through it quickly can try stacking things like journey objectives, priority objectives, projects, and now inherent completion rewards to get the maximum amount of XP per playtime. So, good stuff there. Next up, at number 3, we've got seasonal modifiers. Now, there are a couple of big changes here that I'm putting under one umbrella. We have this season's new modifiers themselves, we have changes to how you grind and unlock seasonal modifiers, and we have changes to how they've constructed the modifiers, specifically the hostile ones. Going down the list, moving away from last season's range-based modifiers, Year 6 Season 3 introduces the Rogue Momentum Global modifier, which in simple terms rewards players with stacking buffs for getting faster and more aggressive weapon and skill kills. There will be a new momentum bar on the side of your HUD, and filling it up with kills unlocks tiered bonuses. These start out pretty tame to begin with stuff like 10% weapon and skill damage and 5% extra reload speed, but as you get higher up, these start to get pretty wild, culminating in the final Unstoppable tier, granting 20% weapon and skill damage, 20% reload speed, 25% rate of fire, 20% movement speed, and permanent skill overcharge for as long as you stay within that tier. Yeah, it's crazy. So last season, many players didn't quite jive with the complexities of range-based combat. Hopefully this time around with the kills to get buffs premise, people will be a bit more inclined to try this out, and I know many have expressed excitement with the more broad inclusion of skill bonuses with this modifier set, so good stuff there. Then there's the matter of how you unlock these seasonal modifiers. Last season, these were split between two sources. You unlocked your active modifiers via the seasonal journey at set tiers, whereas passive modifiers could be farmed as random rewards from the priority objective system. In Burden of Truth, the devs are switching things up. Now, all unlockable modifiers, active and passive, will be awarded at set tiers from your seasonal journey. Hopefully this reduces the RNG pain that many players didn't enjoy from last season, and it streamlines modifier progression into one concise track. Alright, and then finally within this section, we've got changes to hostile modifier methodology, construction, and implementation. You'll recall that hostile modifiers are the innate abilities that some NPCs are given when you play with the modifier system enabled, and they're intended to be opposing power that the enemies we fight have, so that our array of buffs that we get from the modifiers don't allow us to just mindlessly steamroll all content. There were a couple of issues that players identified with the inclusion of hostile modifiers last season, however. For one, some of them were simply a pain to fight, with stuff like Requital reflecting damage back at you if improperly tackled, and Master of None sometimes putting you on a near constant status effect from suppressing fire. Many just couldn't find a groove to naturally combat all of these enemy abilities. Beyond that, it oftentimes proved difficult to decipher which enemy had which modifier and what that modifier did in the heat of battle, right? With the 4 different icons to watch out for, each of them with their own complex description and rule set, it proved tough to track and remember all of that in the heat of battle. And finally was the improperly scaled progression of this all. When the season began, we had no modifiers to customize and utilize. We had to go out and farm them from the aforementioned journey and priority objective sources. On the flip side, NPCs had access to all 4 hostile modifiers right away, and enabling the modifier system saw a merciless level of distribution of those effects. So with all of that in mind, the devs have made some significant changes to hostile modifiers. Next season's hostile modifier, Frenzy, will no longer have a complex description and behavior necessitating you to employ complicated strategies in battle to counteract it. Rather, it simply gives NPCs who have it additional power, such as movement speed, rate of fire, and armor and health regen in combat. And additionally, yes, you heard me right, next season there will only be 1 hostile modifier as opposed to the 4 that we had before. So anytime you see an enemy with an icon on them, you'll know exactly what that correlates to. And finally, the devs have made it so that this lone hostile modifier upgrades itself in power the further you go into your seasonal journey. So when we start the season with no modifiers unlocked, Frenzy has a very simple base version of itself, but as you progress and grow your power by unlocking more modifiers through the journey, Frenzy will then naturally upgrade alongside you, matching that power and eliminating the previous imbalances. So whether it is a more approachable modifier premise, a refinement of the unlock process, or the pretty much overhaul of how hostile modifiers are handled, there's some good stuff coming as far as the modifiers are concerned. Oh, and did I mention that using modifiers now gives you an inherent season pass XP boost? Yeah, pretty solid. For change number 4, we've got new items and gear. Come on, you knew this couldn't be a video on a new season without talking about the new stuff said season is delivering. As per usual, Burden of Truth is bringing a new brand set, gear set, exotics, a weapon talent, and named items. Tons to dive into. Now, across the board, the noteworthy thing from this drop that most players are acknowledging is that how, compared to some of the last few seasons we've gotten where the majority of new items feel underwhelming or otherwise not too viable in the endgame, a lot of what's on offer this season seems to not only be relevant, but pretty powerful for their intended roles and playstyles. Now, we don't have time to cover every single new addition, we'll certainly do so when the season's final patch notes drop, but there's 2 big highlights that I want to spotlight here. First, there's the new Refactor gear set. We did a spotlight of this here on the channel while it was available on the public test server. I'll link that in the description below if you want to check it out. But in essence, this is a skill damage lifesteal set. It gives you a little bit of extra skill damage for the 2 and 3 piece, and then the 4 piece ability offers you the capability to return a percentage of the damage dealt by your skills as healing to both yourself and any allies on your team. Now, this may seem mundane on paper, but between the pretty high healing amounts this was offering in the PTS, as well as the general concept of potentially being able to replace a dedicated healer on a 4-man team with a damage healing hybrid, there's a lot of possibilities that Refactor is going to introduce. So that's an exciting one. Another is the new Exodus Gloves exotic. These basically give you the ability of a hunter. I'm not kidding. Again, I did a video on these during the PTS, link in the description if you want to check it out, but what these do is give our agents a smoke bomb ability. Upon armor break, a giant smoke bomb is dropped at your feet, and in PvE, you completely exit combat and enemies are unable to target you for 3 seconds. In PvP, you gain 100% pulse resistance, and your nameplate gets hidden for 2 seconds. So whether it's for the gameplay potential of an item that allows us to exit combat, or simply the coolness of getting a smoke bomb ability, these are going to be a top new pick for many. A bunch of interesting new items across the board. Alright, and then last but not least, we get to change number 5, reload buffs. So, some context on this. Last season of the game, Year 6 Season 2, came with a major balancing pass for the endgame. This included weapon class retuning, damage tweaking, RPM changes, gear set and exotic talent reworks, just a ton of stuff. Among all of those changes was a general trend of increasing the reload times for most weapons. However, after that balancing pass went live, a lot of feedback began to roll in that many weapons felt unnecessarily slow to reload, and clearly Massive agreed. I'll rotate through some images on screen that break down the changes for each major weapon class, and you'll see that in that fourth column across ARs, SMGs, LMGs, rifles, and pistols, basically every single weapon in those respective categories is getting its reload speed buffed. Some by more marginal amounts, but some much more drastic and noticeable, like 30 to 40% increases in the LMG category. This change is also extending to exotics, impacting weapons like the Bighorn, Chatterbox, Iron Lung, the Pestilence, again somehow, and more. So look forward to popping those mags in a little bit quicker come next season. But that is just about going to do it, my friends, for the 5 biggest changes on the way to the Division 2 in the new Burden of Truth season. Aside from the sting of the DLC's delay, I am quite looking forward to this one. I think seeing the swift implementation of a lot of Seasons 2.0 feedback is fantastic. It looks like there's going to be a lot of awesome new items to theorycraft with, and at long last, I can finally throw a couple extra pieces into my stash. So whatever your biggest takeaways are from this video, I would love to hear about what you're most looking forward to heading into Year 6 Season 3. We've only got 1 week to go. Again, all of this is arriving on February 25th, so stay tuned for my final dev stream recap, patch notes breakdown, launch stream, and so much more starting next week. I very much hope you all enjoyed this one. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you back soon. RogueGold. Ow.